Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Coping with Donald. I'm Phil. Now, it took me about a half an hour to get this camera turned on, so you know that I feel like talking right now, even with my throat. Excuse me. Okay, I truly came on here and I wanted to say good things about Donald Trump. But I can't. Anyway, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that Donald Trump had learned about tariffs and the destruction they could cause, and he had learned that through the world's reaction over the past few months, which made him eventually back off. I thought he was looking for an exit ramp to forget about tariffs entirely. Please remember, and I know you know this by now, that the United Kingdom deal is not a deal because at the bottom of the statement it says this is not a legal binding document. And the China deal was merely to have China settle for 30% tariffs, which will still be tough for consumers to absorb, while trying to figure something out over the next 90 days. Well, Trump just came out and said he's going to send letters to every country now. And those letters are going to be telling them what the tariff rate's going to be for each one. So the drop in the stock market and the dollar and the worries to the world economy and the subsequent recovery of that based on thoughts that we weren't going to have tariffs, he didn't learn from that. Because we're kind of right back where we started, really. Now, the stock market might not reflect that, but there's a bunch of things that are bad that the stock market can't really ignore. First of all, even when you go up that much in such a short period of time, you've got to drop back a little bit. It's not just going to go up and up and up. I think a lot of it went up under false beliefs, false hopes. But then again, I was ready to say, okay, get out of the market now. Maybe, excuse me, 5, 7, 8% ago. So obviously I was wrong about that, okay? I'm not an economist, even though I do have a bachelor's degree in economics. Another really bad thing is that Moody's cut the U.S. debt rating from AAA to AA1 on Friday after the close of the market. There are 3 major rating agencies. One of them cut in 2013, another one cut a couple of years ago, and now Moody's is the last one to cut. And, you know, they say, well, we've got unsustainable debt, blah, 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 which is true. The only thing that stops this is that it's like nobody wants the unsustainable debt, but you have one side wanting to raise taxes in order to cure that, and the other side just simply saying, have the citizens do without in order to cure it. And that's not going to go away, obviously. We both know that. That's another big negative for the stock market now. Finally, Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia. Now, you know, this is a man who exaggerates everything and lies about everything. So, he's going to do $3 trillion of business. And some of that is true. But I would never trust a number out of Donald Trump's mouth. Never. Remember, he says that eggs have decreased in price 87%. If anyone has info on that, send it to me, please. And always feel free to comment below. A lot of the deals, he loves that word. He really, Monty Hall would have had nothing on him. He should have really hosted Let's Make a Deal. He just loves the word so much. Or Deal or No Deal. Any show that has the word deal in it, Donald Trump would love. Anyway, a lot of these deals are simply United States arms sales to countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar. I call it Qatar because it's spelled Qatar, not Qatar. If it was Qatar, it'd be Cutter. It is Qatar. I'm going to pronounce it the way I want to. Qatar. Qatar. Qatar sounds like a teenager who wants to hurt themselves. So they're going to sell arms to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which they always do anyway. Do you know that Saudi Arabia and Qatar, neither of them recognize Israel? At one time, Qatar did, and then they had a disagreement with Israel about 10 years ago, and they stopped this diplomatic relations. Maybe more than 10 years ago. And so at present, they don't. And Saudi Arabia never has. And we're selling arms to them. But don't worry. We also sell arms to Israel. Here you go. As long as we get our money, go blow each other up. We're not prejudiced against anybody here. There's also implications that a lot of this money that Trump's talking about is things that happened last year before he was president. Amazon promised $1 billion, which seems so little now, doesn't it? To develop AI in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, in return, has promised to develop that in conjunction with U.S. companies, so is Qatar. And, well, anyway. Do you remember that journalist who was murdered by Saudi Arabians on the order of the king, a prince, and he denied it and stuff. And then he was cut up into pieces. Remember that journalist? Well, right now there are robots, and I've seen some very frightening footage of them. When the robot gets nervous, when a robot can get nervous, they lash out in a very frightening way. It reminded me of that poor man, journalist, who was killed and then cut up. Just imagine a whole army of them. Anyway, so Amazon's only investing $1 billion, but they expect the Saudi GDP to grow by perhaps $200 billion a year. And they're using that number in Trump's numbers. Because if it's creating GDP in other countries, they're including it in the numbers too. It's not just all American first numbers. Another point to consider is the Saudis. I remember an article a few years ago. They're having trouble balancing their budget or getting close to balancing their budget. And believe me, they don't do much for people. They do invest in their infrastructure. But the Saudis were worried about low oil prices, because they were worried about their country's GDP. And much of what Trump wants is to further energy production. You see that in these mentions of deals also, to lower energy costs. That's what it says. I don't know if Saudi Arabia would really want to go along with that. I don't know if they have the money to go along with that. Somebody brought up that the amount supposedly promised by Qatar, it represents 6 years of their gross domestic product as a country. Wow. That would be like, I don't know, the United States pledging $30 trillion to somebody. So you have to take all these deals with the grain of salt. Okay? I don't feel bad about not trusting any word or any number out of Donald Trump's mouth, because he has built that reputation up over the years, and he deserves it. He is the least trustworthy man on the planet, really. He just makes things up as he goes along to suit whatever argument he's making. But between the Moody's um, Gret, I'm sorry, downgrade of the debt, America's debt, between the tariff letters that are going to be going out, between the somewhat fabricated numbers of all this new investment that's going to happen in business, and remembering that the stock market is probably overbought at this time and the needle is facing greed more than fear, I don't think this is a good time to invest new positions. I think it's time to take some money off the table. You can always go back into the stock market if what I'm saying is wrong. But I really do believe that you need to protect yourself a little bit now. And the rest of it, the social unrest that's happening, the attacks on minorities. Well, you know what? I guess I'll make a second video. But that was just basically on money. You really need to be safe out there. We still have a possible recession coming with this recommitment to tariffs. It makes it more probable. The downgrade alone by Moody's is going to make the dollar even less valuable, and possibly the world will not use it as its reserve currency anymore, which would make it even less valuable. That's actually how more wealth will be destroyed in this country than any other way, than through unemployment or anything like that. So you really do have to be careful. How do you be careful against the dollar going down? I guess if you were that sure the dollar was going down, you could take all your dollars and make them into euros. But that doesn't seem like a very good strategy, does it? Although there are funds out there that, you can trade the dollar. You can trade against the dollar. You can trade against the dollar on behalf of a certain currency that would appreciate. So, those are ideas, just ideas. Be careful out there, and really, even if you're a Trump supporter, don't trust everything he says, okay? Don't just worship him and trust everything he says. Make him be truthful. Okay, I'm signing off now. I'm going to make a second video. It's going to be a shorter one, and because I don't want to have to get the camera back on forever. So, I'm signing off. Have a great weekend.